yesterday was the anniversary of the October 7th, and we know that Donald Trump is talking about the peace plan. How optimistic can we be about the peace plan?
I'm not optimistic at all. And I think most people are skeptical at the least. And everyone should be skeptical. If you're not skeptical, you haven't been following events, you haven't been reading about this, you don't know your history, you don't know the personalities involved. At the same time, too, they're at least talking. I said to you earlier, I saw the video of Witkoff and Kushner arriving in Sharm el Sheikh, and at least they're talking. I mean, and that gives a possibility of something. Now, Israel, of course, is carrying out their airstrikes still. They're sending the explosive robots in. And when I say explosive robots, if people aren't familiar with what I'm talking about, these are armored personnel carriers. So vehicles that the United States has given to Israel. They're typically they're the M113s. They're the big boxy armored personnel carriers that are on tracks. People have probably seen them in movies. And the Israelis stuff 10, 12, 15 tons of explosives into them. They're able to get 20, 30, 40, 20 or 30,000 pounds of explosives into it, from what I understand. A massive amount, a massive amount. So when we say explosive robots, it's not, one of those cute Japanese robots that dances that they put, a couple of sticks of dynamite on. These are massive, massive bombs that are being detonated to take down not just buildings, but destroy entire neighborhoods. Um, so that's all still occurring. But as I said, at least they're talking.
Uh, The title of the talk today, Matt, I put, Can Trump Finally Put Netanyahu in Check? What are the leverages of Donald Trump on Netanyahu? And is he going to be able to use them?
Well, we're the United States is the lifeline to Israel. Over the last 2 years, and this is based on the last figures I saw, which were in August sometime. But there's no reason to believe that these numbers have decreased. They've probably only increased. For 2 years, uh, as Israel has killed almost 100 Palestinians a day, including about 30 children a day, they've been killing for 2 years. The United States, every 15 hours, has sent either a cargo plane or a cargo ship to Israel with weapons, munitions, materials, etc., for the Israelis to kill 30 children a day. I mean, so that's your leverage there. There's leverage as well in terms of the economy. We talked about this last year when I visited Palestine, and I'm in the old city in Jerusalem, and it is empty. It is empty. There's nobody there. And we've seen their imports and exports drop by more than a third. We've seen the great cost to Israeli businesses, tens of thousands of Israeli businesses going out of business, particularly small businesses shutting down, the effects of the constant call up of reservists on the economy, the lack of foreign investment. We could do a whole show just on what has occurred to the Israeli economy as a result of their genocide in Gaza, as well as their military operations around the region. An interesting little caveat that their weapon sales have increased. So last year in 2024, the Israelis sold 14% more weapons than they did the previous year, and they've been setting record sales numbers for their weapons for the last several years. But that's a minor part of their economy. But the idea being is that we keep them afloat. We have a loan guarantee with the Israelis that the bond market understands, that the debt traders understand, that other people who are willing to purchase Israeli debt um, understand, right? This that the United States will back Israel and will guarantee their bonds, will guarantee their debt. So you've seen Israel have a great increase in the number of bonds they have issued, amount of debt they've issued in the last couple of years, and that keeps their government running. and that keeps money moving into their economy, and that keeps them afloat. The idea being that as long as we have the United States, there is no reason to panic. There's no reason to worry. No one is going to harm us. No one is going to sanction us. The repercussions for the United States will be great. So this is why, we saw when Benjamin Netanyahu was here, so last week or 2 weeks ago, I forget now, and he made such we've all seen the clips of him talking to the American social media influencers, and then we've seen the reports come out in the last few weeks from last couple of weeks from Responsible Statecraft. Nick Cleveland Stout there did great work finding that the Israelis are paying social media influencers $7,000 to make posts. Each post is $7,000. As well as the work being done by, say, the Gray Zone and others in exposing the Israelis' information warfare campaign. The Israeli Foreign Ministry is going to spend $150 million this year on influencing Americans. So the idea being is that as long as we keep the Americans with us, anyone could be against this. And we've talked about this before, this concept of Fortress Israel. Netanyahu has said it. He sees Israel as becoming a super Sparta, with an asterisk though. Fortress Israel, super Sparta, Israel against the world, asterisk. The United States though is backing them, and that's what they believe. And it's for the Americans, for the Christian Zionists, for the Israel firsters within the American foreign policy community. It makes sense because that, just as it does for the Israelis, it dovetails with their view of the world, of the universe, of history, that this is a Manichaean fight of good versus evil, of civilization versus barbarism. If you can even expand upon that, they can say, of course, the Europeans are dragging behind us. This is what the president was talking to the Europeans about at the UN, about how they need to get their act together and stop stop seeing their countries going to hell and get on board with the Americans, get on the American and Israeli bus, and let's continue to rule the world, etc. Yeah.
Matt, if I'm not mistaken, it was yesterday that Candace Owens came out with a chat with the messages from Charlie Kirk with one of his colleagues, and he mentioned that one of his donors, he was withdrawing $2 million, and it was a Zionist donor, and he wanted to, influence Charlie Kirk specifically in terms of his relationship with Tucker Carlson. He wanted Charlie Kirk to cancel Tucker Carlson. That was the term he used in those messages. And he said that he's done with the Israeli cause, with the pro-Israeli cause. When you look at the Republican Party, those people like Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Charlie Kirk, as we see more evidence that he was somehow feeling the the heat, feeling the people, young people on the campus who were not that much dedicated in the support for Israel. This change came from the public to Charlie Kirk, and he was just trying to understand what's going on with this issue, because I remember his talks. He was totally pro-Israel. Everything he said was they're doing, they're fighting these people because they want to kill them, all these sort of rhetorics that we hear every day from Israelis. But looking at what has happened to Charlie Kirk, and look at the changes that has happened to his personality, to his movement, do you think that the Israelis somehow are feeling that they're losing the United States in the fight, in terms of the mainstream media, and what's going on, with the overall atmosphere of the mainstream media in the United States? Or maybe we should talk about the public opinion among the young people in the United States. How much of concern is that for Israel today?
It's very concerning. for them. I think they were shocked. They were taken off guard by what this new age of media would do to them as they carried out this genocide. I think if you go back to say the early 80s when they invade Lebanon, and their invasion of the Israeli invasion of Lebanon is absolutely brutal. And the American TV stations, which at that time you're just talking about three, really, ABC, CBS, NBC, and I assume PBS maybe, are reporting on the barbarity of the Israeli invasion, the atrocities being committed by Israel in, say, Beirut. And this has a real effect on the American public. So much so that Ronald Reagan feels the heat, and he calls Menachem Begin, the Israeli prime minister, and tells him to knock it off. Stop your attacks in Israel, in Lebanon. And Begin does. And what occurs from that, though, is an Israeli understanding of we need to get better control of the American political system and the American media system. Essentially get control of the American ruling class. And I shouldn't say get control, because that could be so easily taken out of context, in the sense of that they're this, use that trope, the octopus, right? And I want to try and stay away from that. But the fact is that their resources have had an enormous impact and influence on the American political media and elite class within the United States, because it's their information that has been getting to them. And so you could have now, this is 40 some years after the beginning of this information campaign by the Israelis, the Hasbara campaign, which I'm sure many people are familiar with that term. 40 some odd years after that, they're seeing a breakdown in it. I think they got complacent, because even as the American media and as the American political ecosystems changed, so the American media became much broader, right? So by the 90s, you've got Fox and CNN and MSNBC, and you've got this internet thing happening. And then, of course, the change over the decades. Well, they were able to roll with that. They were able to roll with it. They were able to have the influence on MSNBC and CNN and Fox. And then, of course, the newspaper consolidation made it a lot easier for them. So they did okay. And I think they were caught off guard, again, by the information that's available to people through this technology we have now, whether it be through conversations like ours, whether it be through historical documentaries, people able to dial up and watch 5 minutes about the history of Palestine, whether it be because they could see on their phones the raw, unfiltered footage of ethnic cleansing in progress, right? And they could see it continuing to happen every day. And these are savvy people, and particularly the younger people. They understand how this works. They understand when they're getting when they're getting tricked, or when this is BS that's being peddled to them. They see that this is real. This is not fake. So the Israelis, and on the political side of it, the Israelis do well as the American political system becomes more engulfed with money. So certainly their ability to now, with their lobbies, influence and, in many ways control American politics with regards to Israel-Palestine policy and Middle Eastern policy. So, you had this where the Israelis now understanding where they're at, where their allies in the United States, who are generations, who are the result of generations of only being told one side of the story, or being part of generations long policy chain of Israeli first policy is as good as is the best thing for the United States, right? I mean, so anyone who looks at the Middle East with any type of objectivity will say, good God, any kind of realist lens will say, good God, Israel is an incredible strategic liability for us. David Petraeus said it one time in testimony to Congress, and within 24 hours, he had to retract it and apologize. But Petraeus was correct, and anyone who knows me knows he's not my favorite person, and it's killing me. It's taking life off my ears right now to give this man credit. But he did say to Congress that Israel is a strategic liability for us in the Middle East. And anyone who looks at that says, absolutely, but they peddle it still. You can go to Washington, D.C. right now and talk about the need for Israel, and they still, this nonsense about Israel as a land-based aircraft carrier, which is called an airfield, that whole that phrase always bothers me. But this land, and you're like, Israel's the only country in the region we don't have air bases in. What do you mean we need Israel to have military, or to have our military projected throughout the Middle East? What are you talking about? I mean, so there's all types of aspects of it that don't make sense. But when you are the fifth generation of policymakers, and this is the established wisdom, this is the understanding whether or not you are a neoconservative or a liberal interventionist, the two branches of American foreign policy that make up about 99% of American foreign policymakers. That okay, this is the right way. This is the way it should be. Anything else is heretical. Anything else is not serious. Anything else is simply just unfounded and untrue and suspect. So you have that vision, and the Israelis say, how do we keep that going then? How do we keep this going? And so that's why you've seen these efforts talking about before about paying social media influencers $7,000 a month, various programs. The Drop Site News today has a story about one such program that utilizes establishment media, the Atlantic, the New York Times, others to provide journalists to fill out a fellowship program whose stated purpose is to help Israel win the information war. I mean, so you see stories after Brad Pascal, the former campaign manager for Donald Trump, is running a multi-million dollar program to help with influencing Americans on behalf of Israel. I mean, on and on. But now also you see the purchase of Paramount, which owns CBS News, by Larry and David Ellison, the father-son duo there. Ellison, senior Ellison, he was briefly the richest man in the world. But more importantly, he is probably the biggest backer of the Israeli Defense Forces. And so, you have this move now to try and get major mainstream media back into place, along with a concerted effort to try and, if you can't win on social media, then censor it. So what you have then is the Ellisons, as well as buying Paramount, and they're also in talks to buy Time Warner, which would include CNN and HBO, to purchase. Well, I shouldn't say to purchase that, but they've already purchased TikTok, right? And so we know what's going to happen. They've said it out loud how they're going to tighten TikTok to not allow for pro-Palestine narratives, facts, testimonies, etc. So you have an attempt to either influence or we'll see the censorship. We saw it happen with Jimmy Kimmel, the American late night comedian, late night talk show host, getting suspended for a week or so, where, they'll just put the screws. The government will put the pressure on these corporations, so that I really worry, Nima, how long are we going to be able to do this on YouTube? How long until Google or Alphabet, I guess, say, you know what, it's in our best business interests to not allow conversations like this on YouTube. And then, of course, on top of it all, and I know this is quite a exposition on my behalf, but on top of it all is the National Security Policy Memorandum number 7 that Donald Trump released last week, that defines who are domestic terrorists and makes that a priority for our entire national and domestic security establishments. This is not some type of like, hey guys, kind of try and focus on this. This is an order. This tells everybody